Imagine a computer built before the birth of Christ, capable of predicting eclipses centuries into the future. Now imagine it lying forgotten at the bottom of the sea for 2,000 years. This isn't science fiction. This is history. But the ancient world holds far more than primitive tools and stone wheels. Beneath the dust of collapsed civilizations, archaeologists have unearthed technologies so sophisticated, so impossibly advanced, that modern engineers spent decades just trying to understand how they worked. We're talking about batteries that shouldn't exist for another 18 centuries. Concrete formulas lost for a millennium that we still can't perfectly replicate today. Weapons so deadly they could bring down massive stone walls with nothing but sound and focused energy. These aren't myths carved into temple walls. These are physical objects, held in museums, analyzed in laboratories, dated with precision. And yet, each one rewrites what we thought we knew about human innovation. Each one whispers the same uncomfortable question. How much knowledge did we lose? Today, we'll uncover 5 of the most mind-bending technological discoveries from the ancient world, each one more impossible than the last. And we begin with a corroded lump of bronze that would take us a century to decode, a machine that should never have existed. Discovery 1. The Antikythera mechanism. The bronze computer. The year is 1901. Greek sponge divers surface near the tiny island of Antikythera, their nets tangled with bronze limbs and marble faces. They've stumbled onto a Roman shipwreck, a treasure trove of statues and amphorae destined for the collections of wealthy Romans. But among the artifacts, there's something else. Something small. A corroded, unassuming lump of bronze and wood, fused together by centuries of seawater. For decades, it sits in a museum storage room, ignored. Just another piece of ancient scrap. But then, in the 1950s, a scientist named Derek de Solarprice takes a closer look, and what he finds inside that corroded mass will shake the foundations of our understanding of ancient technology. Hidden within the encrustation are gears. Dozens of them. Precisely cut, interlocking bronze gears arranged in a mechanism so complex it wouldn't be matched in Europe until the 14th century, 14 centuries after this device was built. But here's where it gets truly impossible. This isn't just a collection of gears. It's a computer. An analog astronomical computer designed to calculate and display celestial information. The positions of the sun, moon, and planets, the phases of the moon, even eclipse predictions. All mechanically, all automated, all in a device no larger than a showbox. When modern researchers finally reconstructed its functions using X-ray tomography and advanced imaging, they discovered something that left them speechless. This machine had at least 30 bronze gears, possibly more. It could predict solar and lunar eclipses years in advance. It tracked the ancient Olympic Games cycle. It even accounted for the irregular orbit of the moon using a pin-and-slot mechanism that wouldn't be reinvented until medieval Islamic astronomers developed similar techniques over 1,000 years later. Think about what this means. Sometime around 100 BC, Greek engineers possessed a level of mechanical sophistication that we assumed didn't exist until the Renaissance. They understood not just astronomy, but differential gearing, the same principle that makes your car's transmission work. They had the metallurgical precision to cut bronze gears with teeth smaller than 2 millimeters. And they had the mathematical understanding to encode complex astronomical cycles into mechanical form. But here's the question that haunts every researcher who studies this device. If they could build this, what else could they build? Because this machine wasn't unique. Ancient texts reference other mechanical marvels. Archimedes supposedly built a planetarium that could simulate the movement of heavenly bodies. Cicero describes seeing a device that showed the moon going through its phases. These weren't myths. These were real machines, built with real knowledge. And almost all of them have been lost. The Antikythera mechanism survived only by accident, preserved in the oxygen-starved environment of a shipwreck. How many others corroded into dust? How many were melted down for their bronze? What entire branches of ancient engineering have we lost completely? And there's something even more unsettling. After the fall of Rome, this technology vanished. For over 1,000 years, no one in Europe could build anything remotely this complex. The knowledge simply disappeared, as if someone had deleted it from history's hard drive. But perhaps they left other traces. Other impossible artifacts hidden in plain sight, waiting to rewrite what we think we know about the past. And one of them was sitting in a museum in Baghdad, a clay jar that shouldn't have been anything special, until someone decided to fill it with vinegar. Discovery 2. The Baghdad Battery. Electric current in ancient Mesopotamia. In 1936, while excavating a Parthian settlement near Baghdad, archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig discovered something peculiar. Clay jars, about 5 inches tall, nothing unusual about that, except for what was inside them. Each jar contained a copper cylinder, and inside that cylinder, an iron rod. The rod was isolated from the copper by an asphalt seal. Koenig looked at this configuration and saw something no one else had noticed. He saw a battery. Not a battery in the modern sense. No plastic, no lithium, no wires. But the fundamental components of an electrochemical cell. Copper and iron separated by an electrolyte solution. Most archaeologists dismissed him immediately. The idea was absurd. Batteries weren't invented until Alessandro Volta's experiments in 1800 AD. The concept of electricity itself wasn't understood until the 18th century. So the idea that ancient Mesopotamians, living 2,000 years earlier, could have generated electric current? Impossible. These jars must have been for storing scrolls, or wine, or anything other than electricity. But then someone decided to test it. They built exact replicas of the Baghdad jars, filled them with acidic liquids, vinegar, grape juice, solutions that would have been available to ancient Parthians, and measured the output. The jars produced voltage. Not much, about 1 to 2 volts. But it was real, measurable electrical current. The ancient design worked. It actually worked. Now, skeptics will point out, correctly, that we have no ancient texts describing these jars as batteries. No instructions for their use. No circuit diagrams carved into clay tablets. But absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. And there's compelling circumstantial evidence for what these devices might have been used for. Electroplating. Museums around the world hold ancient artifacts, from Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Persia, that are covered in impossibly thin layers of gold. We're talking about gold plating measured in microns, so thin and even that modern researchers struggle to explain how it was applied. Traditional methods, mercury gilding, leaf application, leave distinctive marks and irregular thickness. But these ancient pieces? Perfectly uniform. The only modern process that can achieve this is electroplating, using electric current to deposit metal ions onto a surface. Could the Parthians have discovered this by accident? Mixed the right chemicals, connected a piece of jewelry to the iron rod, and watched in amazement as gold slowly coated the surface? But here's where it gets stranger. The Baghdad jars weren't unique to one site. Similar artifacts have been found across ancient Mesopotamia, spanning different time periods and cultures. Some date back to the Seleucid period, around 250 BC. That's a technology that persisted, that was manufactured repeatedly over centuries. This wasn't a one-off experiment. This was a tool. And if they had this tool, what did they understand about electricity? Ancient Egyptian texts describe touching certain fish, electric catfish native to the Nile, and feeling thunder without clouds. Greek physicians prescribed electric torpedo fish for treating headaches and gout. The Romans knew these fish could temporarily paralyze a person. Did ancient people recognize this force? This invisible power that could shock, paralyze, and apparently even coat objects in gold? We may never know the full extent of their understanding. But the jars exist. The voltage is real. And somewhere in the ruins of ancient Mesopotamia, craftsmen were manipulating electric current 2 millennia before Benjamin Franklin flew his kite. But if ancient engineers could harness electricity, then what else could they manipulate? What other natural forces did they bend to their will? Because in the architectural marvel of ancient Rome, engineers mixed a concrete that has outlasted everything we've built in the modern era, and we still don't fully understand why. Discovery 3. Roman concrete. The self-healing stone. Stand in front of the Pantheon in Rome. Look up at its massive dome, still the world's largest unreinforced concrete dome, nearly 2,000 years after it was poured. No steel reinforcement. No modern additives. Just Roman concrete, mixed by hand, shaped by slaves and engineers who never heard of Portland cement. And it's still standing. More than that, it's thriving. Now compare it to a modern concrete highway, built 50 years ago with cutting-edge materials and engineering standards. It's already crumbling. Potholes, cracks, chunks of concrete breaking loose and bouncing off windshields. We repair it every few years, resurface it, patch it, and still it deteriorates. How is it possible that Roman concrete, mixed with ancient tools and ancient knowledge, outperforms our modern formulas? For decades, this was a mystery. Engineers knew Roman concrete was superior. The evidence was literally everywhere, from the Colosseum to ancient harbors still intact beneath the Mediterranean, but no one knew why. The Romans left no instruction manual, no concrete cookbook. The formula was lost sometime after the fall of the empire, buried under centuries of rubble and forgotten knowledge. But before moving on, I'd like to ask you for something. If you like these documentaries and want to support me, please consider subscribing. It's free. Then, in 2017, researchers at MIT and laboratories in Italy finally cracked the code. They analyzed samples of ancient Roman concrete at the microscopic level, and what they found rewrites everything we thought we knew about concrete chemistry. The secret ingredient? Volcanic ash. Romans used a specific type of volcanic ash called pozzolana, mixed with lime and seawater. But it's not just that they used volcanic ash, it's what that ash does over time. When seawater penetrates the concrete through tiny cracks, instead of corroding the material like it does with modern concrete, it triggers a chemical reaction. The volcanic ash contains aluminum and silicon compounds that, when exposed to seawater, form new crystalline structures. Specifically, they form a rare mineral called aluminum tobamorite. These crystals grow within the concrete structure, literally filling in cracks and gaps. The concrete heals itself. Modern concrete does the opposite. When seawater invades modern concrete, it attacks the calcium compounds, dissolving them, creating more cracks, accelerating decay. It's a death spiral. Roman concrete? It gets stronger. The longer it sits in seawater, the more robust it becomes. And this wasn't accidental. Romans deliberately built their harbor structures, piers, breakwaters, underwater foundations, to exploit this property. They understood that their concrete would interact with seawater. They designed for it. But here's the truly staggering part. We can't replicate it. Not exactly. We can analyze Roman concrete down to its molecular structure. We can identify every mineral, every compound, every chemical reaction. We can even mix our own versions using volcanic ash and seawater. But we can't quite match the durability. Something in their mixing process, their curing technique, some subtle variable we haven't identified, it eludes us. Think about that. We've split the atom. We've sent robots to Mars. We've sequenced the human genome. But we can't perfectly recreate a construction material invented by engineers who thought the Earth was flat. And it's not just harbor concrete. Roman roads still exist across Europe, some still bearing traffic. Roman aqueducts still carry water. The Pont du Gard in France, built around 50 AD, stands unchanged, no significant repairs, no modern reinforcement. It simply endures. Meanwhile, modern infrastructure crumbles. The American Society of Civil Engineers estimates that repairing deteriorating concrete infrastructure in the United States alone will cost over $2 trillion. We're living in a civilization that can't maintain its own roads and bridges for more than a few decades, while ancient Romans built structures that have weathered 2,000 years of earthquakes, floods, wars, and weathering. What happened? The knowledge was lost. Deliberately or accidentally, we may never know. Perhaps it vanished during the chaos of Rome's collapse, when libraries burned and master builders died without passing on their secrets. Perhaps it was simply forgotten, replaced by cheaper, faster methods that seemed good enough, until they weren't. But Roman concrete proves something unsettling. Ancient people weren't just primitive versions of us, struggling with limited knowledge and crude tools. In some ways, they were more advanced. They built better, more sustainably. with a deeper understanding of materials and chemistry than we give them credit for. And if they mastered concrete to this degree, what else did they master? What other technologies flourished and then vanished? Because in ancient Greece, engineers developed a weapon so terrifying, so devastating, that it became the nuclear deterrent of the ancient world. A fire that burned on water and couldn't be extinguished. Discovery 4. Greek fire. The weapon that burned the sea. Constantinople, 678 AD. An Arab fleet surrounds the city, hundreds of warships choking the Bosphorus, preparing for the final assault that will topple the Byzantine Empire. The defenders are outnumbered, outmaneuvered, facing an enemy that has conquered half the known world. This should be the end. And then, Byzantine ships unleash something the Arab sailors have never seen before. Something that will haunt their nightmares for generations. Fire. But not ordinary fire. This fire shoots from bronze tubes mounted on the prows of Byzantine warships, spraying liquid flames across the water. It hits the wooden hulls of Arab vessels and explodes into infernos. Sailors dive overboard to escape, and the fire follows them. It burns on the surface of the sea. Water doesn't extinguish it. Water makes it worse. Men thrash in the waves, screaming, as flames cling to their bodies like living things. Ships disintegrate into charred skeletons. The Arab fleet, unstoppable for decades, breaks and flees in absolute terror. This is Greek fire, and nobody knows what it was. The formula was one of the most closely guarded secrets in history. Byzantine emperors considered it a divine gift, a weapon so powerful that revealing its composition would be treason against God and empire. Only a handful of people knew how to manufacture it. Members of one family, the descendants of Callinicus of Heliopolis, the engineer who supposedly invented it in the 7th century. They never wrote it down. They never shared it. And when the Byzantine Empire finally collapsed in 1453, the secret died with them. But we know what it could do. And it's terrifying. Historical accounts describe Greek fire as a liquid projected from siphons, bronze tubes pressurized to spray flames at enemy ships. Some sources mention it being launched in ceramic grenades, explosive pots that shattered and spread fire on impact. Byzantine dromons, their warships, were equipped with rotating turrets that could aim these flame projectors in any direction, turning the ships into floating flamethrowers. And the fire itself behaved like nothing else in the ancient world. It burned intensely, hot enough to set waterlogged wood ablaze. It couldn't be smothered with water. According to Byzantine sources, it could only be extinguished with very specific substances: vinegar, sand, or urine. Some accounts claim it could burn underwater, though this is likely exaggeration. But the core facts are indisputable. This was a chemical weapon that gave Byzantium a terrifying advantage for over 4 centuries. So what was it made of? Modern historians and chemists have been trying to reverse engineer Greek fire for centuries. The most likely theory involves a petroleum base, naphtha, the same flammable liquid that seeps from natural deposits in parts of the Middle East and the Caucasus. Mixed with pine resin for thickness, sulfur for intense heat, and possibly quicklime, which reacts violently with water, you get something that behaves like the descriptions in Byzantine texts. But that's just a theory. We can't be sure. And the Byzantines weren't just mixing flammable liquids. They had pressurized delivery systems, temperature-resistant bronze tubes, and chemical formulations stable enough to store and transport. This wasn't a primitive Molotov cocktail. This was sophisticated military technology. And they kept it secret for over 700 years. Think about that operational security. 7 centuries. Through wars, invasions, sieges, the rise and fall of dynasties, the formula remained hidden. Compare that to the Manhattan Project. The atomic bomb was the most closely guarded secret of World War II, protected by armies and intelligence agencies. The Soviet Union stole the designs within 4 years. Greek fire? Never leaked, never captured, never betrayed, until it was simply forgotten. By the time Constantinople fell to the Ottoman Turks, the technology was already obsolete. Gunpowder had arrived. Cannons could shatter stone walls from a distance. The era of flamethrowers and liquid fire was ending. The last Byzantine engineers who knew the formula died, and their knowledge evaporated like smoke. And now we're left with descriptions. Accounts from terrified Arab chroniclers who watched their fleets burn. Byzantine military manuals with frustratingly vague instructions. Archaeological evidence of bronze siphons and ceramic grenades. But no formula. No recipe. No way to resurrect the weapon that saved Byzantium. But here's what haunts me about Greek fire. It's proof that entire branches of technology can vanish. Not just obscure tools or forgotten techniques. Major military innovations that dominated warfare for centuries. If the formula for Greek fire could be completely lost, what else disappeared? What other secrets burned with libraries, sank with ships, crumbled with empires? Because in the mountains of Turkey, carved deep into volcanic rock, ancient engineers built an underground city capable of sheltering 20,000 people. Complete with ventilation, water systems, and defensive mechanisms so sophisticated they could seal entire levels with massive stone doors. And we have no idea who built it or why. Discovery 5. Derinkuy Underground City. The Hidden World Beneath Turkey. 1963. A man in the Cappadocia region of Turkey is renovating his house. He's knocking down a wall in his basement when the wall collapses, and behind it, there's a tunnel. Not a saw line. Not a natural cave. A carved passageway, descending into darkness. He follows it down, and down, and down. And what he discovers will force archaeologists to rewrite the history of ancient engineering. An entire city. Underground. Not a few rooms. Not a wine cellar or a storage facility. A sprawling, multi-level metropolis carved directly into the soft volcanic rock of Cappadocia. 18 levels deep, extending roughly 280 feet below the surface. Large enough to house 20,000 people. Complete with living quarters, food storage, livestock stables, churches, schools, wine presses, and communal gathering spaces. This is Derinkuy. And the most unsettling part? It's not alone. Over 200 underground cities have been discovered in Cappadocia. Some smaller, some nearly as large. Many connected by miles of tunnels. Together, they form a hidden network, a shadow civilization carved beneath the surface, invisible from above, capable of sheltering tens of thousands of people for months at a time. But who built this? When? And perhaps most importantly, why? The official answer is uncertain. Some archaeologists attribute Derinkuy to the Hittites, a Bronze Age civilization that dominated Anatolia around 1200 BC. Others suggest the Phrygians expanded it. Christians fleeing Roman persecution definitely used these underground cities. Carved chapels and Christian symbols prove that. Byzantine Christians hiding from Arab raids occupied them for centuries. But here's the problem with all these theories. None of them explain the sophistication of the engineering. Let's start with ventilation. When you tunnel deep underground, oxygen becomes your enemy. Torches consume it. Cooking fires consume it. Thousands of people breathing consume it. Without a steady supply of fresh air, an underground city becomes a tomb within hours. Derinkuy has 52 ventilation shafts, some plunging the entire depth of the city. Over 280 feet, perfectly vertical, carved through solid rock. These shafts are positioned to create airflow, using natural convection to draw fresh air down and push stale air up. The engineers who designed this understood fluid dynamics. They understood how to engineer pressure differentials to move air through miles of tunnels without mechanical fans or pumps. And then there's the water system. Human beings can't survive without water. An underground city housing 20,000 people needs thousands of gallons per day for drinking, cooking, sanitation. Derinkuy has wells that tap into underground aquifers, channeling water throughout the city via carved channels. Some levels have cisterns for storage. The distribution system ensures even the deepest levels receive water. But here's what's remarkable. The wells are designed so that if attackers try to poison the water supply from above, only the upper levels are contaminated. Lower levels have independent water sources. The city's designers anticipated chemical warfare and engineered redundancy into their infrastructure. And then there are the doors. Massive circular stone doors, some weighing over 1,000 pounds, capable of sealing off entire sections of the city. These doors roll on internal pivots, easily moved from the inside but nearly impossible to force from the outside. Each door has a small hole at chest height, just large enough to thrust a spear through, allowing defenders to attack anyone trying to breach the door. This isn't a refugee camp. This is a fortress, a subterranean defensive network designed to withstand prolonged sieges. But sieges by whom? That's the question no one can answer. Some historians suggest Arab raids during the Byzantine period, but the engineering is far older than that. Some passages show tool marks consistent with Bronze Age techniques. Radiocarbon dating of organic materials found in the city suggests occupation as early as 1200 BC, possibly earlier. So who were the ancient inhabitants running from? What threat was so persistent, so terrifying, that entire populations carved cities into rock rather than defend surface settlements? And here's the really disturbing part. Building Dorinkui required decades, possibly centuries, of continuous effort. Thousands of workers chipping away with bronze and iron tools, carving through volcanic tuff one handful at a time. The volume of rock removed is staggering, millions of cubic feet, all hauled to the surface and scattered to avoid detection. This wasn't a panic response to an immediate threat. This was multi-generational engineering. Families lived and died while this city grew beneath their feet. Which means whatever they were hiding from wasn't a single war or a passing invasion. It was a permanent condition of existence. And we have no written records explaining any of it. No ancient texts describing Dorinkui's construction. No blueprints. No king's decree ordering its excavation. The city simply exists, a monument to nameless engineers and countless workers, their motives lost to time. But the city itself tells a story. A story of people who looked at the dangers of the surface world and decided the only solution was to go underground. To carve safety into stone. To build a hidden refuge where enemies couldn't follow. And they succeeded. Dorinkui remained forgotten for over 1,000 years. Even the people living directly above it had no idea it existed. The tunnels were sealed, the entrances hidden, the entire complex erased from memory. Until a basement wall collapsed in 1963, and the world remembered what ancient people could achieve when survival demanded it. So there you have it. 5 technologies that should never have existed. Computers that calculated the cosmos, batteries that may have plated gold, concrete that heals itself, fire that burned on water, and underground cities carved from living rock. Each one a testament to human ingenuity. Each one a reminder of how much knowledge we've lost. And each one a question. What else is buried beneath the dust, waiting to rewrite history? If you enjoyed this journey into the impossible past, consider subscribing. There's far more ancient knowledge waiting to be uncovered.